Jim was asking what the panel is about. So, the panel is about film financing and distribution.
Yay.
I have friends of mine here. One of my friends is not here, he had to go to Chicago. But Jim Germanic is a former ICM agent and a producer. I'll let them describe themselves in more detail. Vin is a producer and also an old friend, and Richard Sheehan is well, he's in transition, and I'll let him describe exactly what he does. But you're going to hear about film financing and distribution. We'll try to talk fast. I don't have a prepared section, but I'm sure this will work. So Jim, quickly tell them what you do.
I'm a writer, director, and producer in film, new media, and TV. And very proud to be a client of Mark Jacobson, who's a fantastic lawyer, and I know them all.
How much is that? That's 1-800-MARK-JACOBSON. 1-800-MARK Jacobson.
You know, there's a lot of people who call themselves entertainment lawyers who are not that good. Mark is exceptional. Just want to make you aware of that.
Vin?
So,
What does Vin do?
what does Vin do? I've been trying to figure that out.
So I've been proofreading M&M's for many years, and it's made me a living. Thank you. I'm a producer. I have 2 production companies. So I've been at this festival with one of my production companies and a couple of genre films we've made. So I've made movies off of credit cards and borrowing money from my parents and friends and family. And I have another production company where we do a lot of studio films. So we do more traditional financing with cast and foreign pre-sales and so on.
Hi, I'm Rich Sheehan, and I'm a banker. I've been in banking for 30 years, doing entertainment financing for the last decade, single picture financing, as well as music catalogs and film libraries. So looking forward to hearing what everybody's asking questions about today.
Okay, so how many of you are lawyers? And how many of you are accountants? And how many of you are producers? And how many of you are writers? And directors? Okay, so we have an interesting mix. So the panel is really supposed to talk about film financing and distribution. So how do you get your picture financed, I guess is the first question you have, right? So Jim, how would you get your picture financed? We have let's say we have we're going to give some facts here. We have a budget of $2 million, which is still a relatively low budget picture. It's probably bigger than most of the pictures that are here, but it's a big enough number where we can impact lots of different things. So let's just start with a $2 million budget.
I think $2 million is very high right now, actually, in the market in terms of recoupment. You know, you're throwing around $2 million. $2 million, there are Academy Award-winning directors who can get films financed for $2 million right now. It's a very difficult time in our business. I think you have to be realistic about what your budget is. I know a lot of award-winning, let's say Sundance award-winning producers and directors who are making films for $300,000 to $2 million. So if you're going to make a film for $2 million, you better have at least 2 serious actors that mean something, that are meaningful to sales agents and distributors. And if you can't reach those people, if you don't have the reach to getting a call return at CAA or ICM or William Morris, you better have somebody in your team that does have that reach. So, you know, assembling a team is a very, very important part of this. Don't try to do this alone. It's too difficult. But anyway, where do I get the money? For the most part, I've made 5 feature films. For the most part, it's begging rich people. I don't know, you know, I hate to demystify it for you, but Harvey Weinstein is not going to put money into your film on the first try. This is not going to happen. And nor will Fox Searchlight, nor will Sony Picture Classics, unless you have an A-list star or an A-list director, which are very hard to get because they're booked, generally speaking, for 2 or 3 years in advance. So my advice is to make a list of all the wealthy people you know, and you know, once the script is in incredible shape, and think about hiring or working with an executive producer. If you're new to the circus, work with somebody who's been to the circus 5 or 6 times. They're out there, they're for hire, they'll work with you. They'll reach out and get attachments for you from the agencies that return their calls. They'll speak to distribution companies and sales agencies. You know, I do this occasionally as a consultant. Find somebody who can do that for you. find somebody in your team. But generally speaking, the money comes from wealthy people in terms of independent film. I'm also involved in TV, and that's very different. There, you know, I'm speaking to 3 to 5 network executives a week right now. It just so happens because I'm developing a number of TV shows, and if they like it, guess what? You get money right away. So it's a very different business. But for film, the second thing you want to do is you want to shoot in a place like New York that gives you a tax incentive. To not do so is just simply foolish. Simply foolish. So Massachusetts, New York, Georgia, Louisiana, New Mexico, Nebraska, Illinois, those are a few of the top states. Rhode Island, those are a few of the top states that give you taxes. In other words, that give you essentially free money, to give you money from between 20 to 40% of your budget you get. So that's another source of money.
So let me just stop you there for a second. Vin, how do
$2
you,
million film right now.
why don't you talk about how the film gets packaged? Because Jim alluded to packaging.
Yeah.
And I think packaging is a really important part of this. Jim referred to the team. The team is really maybe the professionals, but you need more than just a team of an executive producer and a producer and a line producer. It's more than that.
Yes, I'm in this situation right now. We're making a movie called LIIFE, and we have done a lot of the things that Jim talked about. So we assembled, myself and my partner, Greg O'Connor, and Greg's got great production credits, so I assembled a team of people that had really good credibility of producing profitable movies for Hollywood. Then we went out to a foreign sales agent, and we had a list of casts that we thought could work, and we talked to the foreign sales people and said, what do you think? They came back and said, you know what, if you get this one or this one, we can offer up some pre-sales against that at this level and that level and so on. So the bulk of the budget we're spending on cast. And it's a first-time director, by the way, which is highly unusual to get financing using a first-time director. So this is exactly what we've done. We went out, got foreign pre-sales. We're shooting in a state that gives us a lot of tax credits, and we're financing about 80% of the movie just through that, and then taking loans from guys like you. And then bringing in 10 to 20% of that's in equity, maybe 10% in equity, 10% in gap. So we financed the movie, we're shooting, and that's how we did it. It's a needle in a haystack in a sense, because you need to find the right cast. And the way to get these people is really where Jim was talking about, is try and associate or find connections, work through the festival here. That's one of the great things about the festival, is great connectivity. You meet some good people, network, bring in other people to executive produce. There's folks that have made movies here that I've invested in, and they're able to leverage some of the things that I've done successfully, and that helps them, and so on and so forth. So I'm case in point on this one, Mark, of a production that worked that way. But not having any of those things, it goes down to being really friendly with anyone that's high net worth, or doing events, crowdfunding, doing whatever you can, or making a movie for $50,000 to $100,000.
But I would venture to guess that your budget is larger than $2 million.
It's $2 million.
Really?
$2 million, okay. Yeah. It's actually $1.6 million. It's the lead actor is Hayden Christensen from Star Wars. We were able to get him because we paid his rate off the $2 million, so you can imagine how much is left to make the movie. But we have enough to make a really good movie. And the foreign sales were almost break even.
What genre is it?
It's a World War II zombie movie, believe it or not. So it's and there were lots of zombies during World War II, if you remember correctly.
I can imagine.
Yeah, it's a long story, but it's not a hardcore horror film. It's more of a thriller horror-ish, So anyway.
That brings up another important point, which is that certain genres are much more marketable than others. So I just got back from Cannes, and there's a tremendous interest in sci-fi, of course, horror, thrillers, more so than, let's say, dramas or romantic comedies or comedies. So there is a primacy there. It's much easier. Certain genres are much easier. That doesn't mean to say you can't make a drama, but you'll probably it'll be more difficult to get pre-sales. And because I really, the notion of pre-sales for films without really established directors or well-known stars, it's very, very difficult right now. particularly for that lower group of genres.
Okay, so we've put together an executive producer, we have a director, we have actors, we probably know who the department heads are going to be, costume designer, production designer, because we're pretty clear about all that. So we have pretty much a package so far, and as the producer, you probably have paid some money to some people. You've probably paid a consulting fee to the executive producer. You may have paid a casting director to help you bring in that cast. Or if you can't afford the casting director, you found the actor's dentist and you spoke to the dentist and said, could you get him this script? And he got you the script. And he got the script to the actor. And that's how this gets done. It really does. So you spent some money, you have a package, and now you say, great, I know there are banks out there that are going to that give money to films, and I know there's tax credits out there. So you call up Richard and you say, Richard, give me money for my film. I have so-and-so, I have all this great package. Richard, what do you say?
Well, first, are you bonded? And that's typically what the banks look for. And that's why I asked about budget. Typically, bonding, you start at $3 million and up, right? Because it's expensive.
Do we know what a bond is? Anybody not know what a bond is? Okay, a completion bond is what he's talking about, and it's an insurance policy. And the insurer guarantees to the investors, and in particular the bank, that the picture is going to be completed on time and on budget. And most filmmakers hate completion bond companies in the beginning. Why do they hate them? Because they think they're going to take their picture away from them. Because they will, if you don't deliver on time and on budget. And they will then finish the film for you. But that's not what you should look at completion bond companies as. You should look at them as your pals, because their goal is the same as yours, which is to deliver the film on time and on budget. They're expensive. You have to have a 10% contingency in your budget. You can negotiate what is contingent compensation, or I'm sorry, what is that number? There's an ability to negotiate that, and you have to pay a premium of 3% of the budget to the bond company. But they guarantee your film comes in on time and on budget. Guaranteed. You may not be the director anymore, but the picture is guaranteed to come in on time and on budget. Because if you're 25 pages behind after the first week, you're out. So you want that bond company there. You want them there to tell you what you're doing wrong, to help you. And if your picture's going over budget, they'll tell you. And they'll say, you got to do this, you got to do that. And if you listen to them, you'll have your picture on time and on budget. So for the segue back to Richard, now that there's a bond and the bank knows that the picture's going to come in on time and on budget, they might be willing to lend you money.
Right, then we're looking at where are you filming, so are there tax credits involved? How much equity is
So we're talking about lending at the moment. Suppose we have a picture for $500,000 and Vin loves it. And Vin says, I'm going to write you a check for $500,000 to make this movie. How many of you know what his standard deal would be, or the standard deal in the entertainment business for a 100% equity financed picture? Any ideas? Who knows what it is? Yes?
I think it's para pursue and 50% dollar for dollar.
Close. Anybody else? Okay, so the investor gets his money back first. 100% of the money back before anybody else gets any money. I've had clients call me up and say, that's outrageous, I made the film. And I say, yeah, you got paid to make the film with his money. So Vin's invested $500,000 into your movie, you've drawn a salary. Maybe $1,000, maybe $25,000, whatever it is. But no matter what happens to the sale, after the sales agent takes his deductions, after the bank takes its loan or whatever, all those things, the equity investor who puts up 100% of the money gets 100% of his money back first, no matter what. There's no net profit yet. Then there's something else. He wants to recover his opportunity cost because Vin gave you $500,000 and he took it out of other assets that he had that he was investing in. So he invested in your thing and he's got it sitting in the stock market. Maybe it's doing 12% a year, maybe he's doing 4% a year, but he gets a premium on top of that. He gets his 100% plus anywhere from 10 to 60% of that money back first. So if it's a 40% deal, he gets 100% plus 40% of the 500,000, as they did in Black Swan, which was brought up earlier, and 40% would be another $200,000. So Vin now has received $700,000 on your $500,000 movie. And now he only gets half of the profit on top of that, and you get the other half. But you have to pay the actors and the directors, and everybody, and yourself, and the lawyer, and whoever else came along that participates in that profit. So as a rule of thumb, if you as the producer, assuming you're the producer, end up with between 25 and 35% of the net profit of the picture, you've done yourself a pretty good job.
By the way,
Remember, you took zero financial risk.
There's
You have $500,000?
actually there's $500,000 taped under one of your chairs. That's a little special thing we're doing here at the festival. Deb, is that okay? Yeah. I think it's under your chair, Deb. I put it there purposely. There's a filmmaker here a couple of years ago that did a pretty creative thing in financing. He's making a movie about motorcycle riding, like Easy Rider, and he went to all the motorcycle clubs, you know, and just networked through them and said, hey, I'm going to make this movie. How can we partner and get some of people who are passionate about motorcycle riding and cruising to participate? He actually raised some money that way, and it started the ball. You know, it started it rolling down the hill. He wasn't able to get any of the traditional stuff we're talking about here, based on, you know, not being able to get the type of cast and all that. So getting creative and going into your passion set is also one way to market and sell the movie. He went all over the country to every motorcycle club and show that you can imagine, and set up booths, and people gave him $10, and you know that adds up.
So understanding the equity financing helps you understand the lending part as well. Go ahead.
I just want to elaborate on the equity finance. Basically, there's two different pies in that. There's the investor's pie, let's say it's one investor, and then there's the creative pie, which involves you, the producer. You probably, if you have a name actor, you have to give them some net points. The director, could be even the writer. Thank God. So you have the creative pie and you have the investor's pie, and it's 50 each, or like generally 50%, although that can differ. One time, in order to get investors, I gave them 70% of the net. So the producing director, everybody just got 30%. So that can differ, but usually it's 50-50. So I just want to clear that up. Yeah, a great way to finance right now is niche financing. Right now, if you're looking at a project you gotta wonder, is there any potential for niche or brand? Is it branded in any way? Meaning, is it, is it a Christmas film, so it's from a holiday, or is it from a major event like World War I, or is there a country? Could be a sport, maybe it's a film about wakeboarding or a hobby. All these things are kind of branded, and 95% of studio are branded because they're based on previous works. They're a well-known author, young adult novel, video game. Those are all examples of branding. So you have to look at your film and say, is it branded? Is there a certain pre-existing audience that you have that you don't have to create from scratch? So that's important in both investing and marketing. Marketing, it's obvious. Investing, you can find somebody who would benefit from your film coming out in some way. So if you're doing a film about drag racing, you speak to the top people who make the most money from drag racing, who would benefit from that sport being more popularized. So that's a very important concept. If your film doesn't have anything in it to be branded, if it's completely unbranded, if it doesn't have anything in it to put it in some kind of niche, a gay film is a niche. A Jewish film is a niche. These are niches. There are groups of people, in the population, of course, who want to go to these films specifically.
What about a gay Jewish film?
Even better. Even better.
And there's lots of rich gay Jewish
Just wanted to clear that up.
There's lots of rich gay Jewish people.
They're both huge. They're both huge film-going audiences,
Yeah.
too. So if you don't have anything like that, it's not branded, it's not niche, you have a severe disadvantage in terms of finance.
Mark, there's a question over down there.
Where does the creative accounting come in? Back to the $500,000 equity investor, because there usually are no net profits in films. So the formula looks great for the investor, but in reality, they usually don't see any money.
Well,
So, like Forrest Gump, for example, how is it that a movie can make hundreds of millions of dollars and the writer still didn't get paid?
yeah, it's easy.
That's the studios.
Right, it's easy. So let me start that, because the next question I was going to ask Vin is, what are you paying your sales agent on the deal that you made? What's his commission?
About 10.
Okay, 10%. All right. Most of the sales agency deals that I've seen are somewhere between 15 and 25%. Okay, and the way a sales agency deal goes, typically, I don't know enough about Vin's film, but if I've engaged a sales agent to represent my client in connection with a picture, and they've promised that they're going to go out and raise, say, $800,000 on my $2 million picture, they take typically between 15 and 25% of that off the top as their commission. In addition, they will take a marketing fee off the top of some number, which is their cost of going to the markets like Cannes, like AFM, like Berlin, like Sundance, where distributors go and buyers go, and there's an opportunity for them to sell. So they take a marketing expense, they take a distribution expense. So what was originally going to be $800,000 is now reduced by those numbers. Let's say it's 20%. So the 800 now became less 160, $640,000, let's say a $40,000 marketing fee. So now what was 800 is 600. And you don't get that up front. The sales agent goes out and makes a deal, and the buyer says, I'll give you 20% now, but I don't know if you're going to deliver the picture. When you deliver the picture, I'll give you the rest of the money. So that's where Richard comes in and lends against that piece of the money. So there's a cost to him, a cost to you of having Richard lend. He's going to deduct interest, and he's not going to lend against 100% of the contract because he wants to have a risk. He wants you to bear some of the risk, so maybe he lends against 85% of that contract. So now what was $600,000 is reduced by another $15,000 plus the transaction cost, and now what was $800,000 is now about $500,000. Okay? So, and that doesn't come in until later on. So that's one part of it. And then you get into the distribution analysis. I have a sheet that my kids saw many years ago, what they called How Daddy Makes $120 Million Disappear on one piece of paper. And it talks about a picture that's budgeted at $10 million It has a print and ad budget of $12 million, and it assumes $100 million box office gross. At the end of the day, there's $2 million left over for the producer. And the way that creative accounting happens is there are overhead fees at the studio, there's interest on the money that the studio has given you, there's a distribution fee that gets added in, there were deferrals that were added in, and all of that goes down to the bottom. The challenge is in understanding, in particular, the marketing costs and the distribution fee of your picture. I was involved with a picture several years ago that had a marketing cost that was twice what the producer expected the distributor to spend, and they are now in a litigation over it because they want more money. So the question about creative accounting leads us into distribution. And so distribution these days is not only incredibly difficult to get, it's also, in many cases, in my view, not a wise idea to get theatrical distribution because of the cost of marketing. I don't know what the other guys think.
I'm 100% on that page. I mean, what we're doing with Umtat is we've hired a social media team. We're putting it out there. We know there's an audience for this movie, and we're trying to find them and seed them. And we only have foreign distribution. We haven't even bothered with any of the US guys yet because of this rat hole that you can get into with some of the distributors. So what we're gonna try and do is get our social media, get our users, do the old, I got a million follower kind of thing, but we're gonna build that over time. We haven't even started filming yet. So we've got a few months, obviously, to do that. So we're trying to look at that, and we may even look at ways to self-distribute this film in the US, as opposed to going through traditional distribution. We're gonna examine that closely. Because I have movies that have done over $100 million, and movies that have done $12 million. I had a $500,000 movie that did $12 million. I'm still chasing my money. So it's hard to get money back from the distributors. But the world has opened up, streaming, over-the-top programming. If it's not self-distribution, it's some of these newer platforms. Build a social media base. I cannot encourage you enough to spend money on that. It's not a lot. I mean, you can pay someone $500 a month to seed the social world, but you're building a user base, and that's important now, especially for smaller movies where you're only looking to recoup a couple $100,000. Bigger movies, it goes up from there.
All of you should have a Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter presence, every one of you. And when you have a project that's coming, you need to give it a very long lead time. So it's not just 2 weeks before it's coming out. You should let people know about this and have them like your page and create a page 6 months to a year in advance. If you're doing a crowdfunding campaign, you need to have a large team. It's 24/7 for 30 days. Crowdfunding is working for a lot of people, but you need to have a large team, and you can really figure out who's doing what, a tremendous division of labor, and an excellent video by the filmmaker or wherever. Distribution, independent film distribution is becoming more and more difficult to get. It's becoming more and more expensive. There's very little advances being given. Even if you get a distributor, they don't give you advance sometimes. So it's incumbent upon all of you to learn, at least learn about distribution and marketing. And some people in the independent film world are actually creating sections of their budget, maybe 25% to 50% for distribution, doing their own DIY, it's called do it yourself, their own distribution. Some people I know hire distributors, they hire a booker. So instead of going in with a big distribution company, they'll hire somebody for $3 to $5 grand a month and let that person literally book films. Some directors I know are doing that themselves. You can get actually a directory of all the exhibition people, all the theaters, and call them. So I mean, it depends how much you want to get into it, but you need to be aware of it. And I think the day and age where relying on some distribution company to sweep in and give you money and take care of you completely, is that day and age is going away, unless it's a blockbuster film. So as an independent filmmaker, you got to start learning about distribution, and there are alternatives. I know a producer who made 3 times his money. He never released it theatrically. He didn't even play that game. What he did is he had to happen to have a famous hip-hop star in it. He went to the hip-hop's Twitter, and the hip-hop star had 5 million Twitter followers, and said, listen, hey, he just made a film, it's exclusively available to you, your Twitter followers. We'll give it to you for $2.95 or $3.95. And they sold, 400,000 people bought it. And the guy tripled his income. He never once had the film in one theater. So what I'm saying is, just like the entertainment business, just like the independent film industry, the distribution world is in flux, it's changing. So the more innovative you can be, the more successful you'll be.
I actually built my own over-the-top streaming network. It's on Roku, Hulu, and a bunch of platforms out of frustration with what you just described. And there's another unique crowdfunding group out there called TubeStart, and they do something a little different. So, you know, if you crowdfund on Kickstarter or any of these places, you tell folks you'll get a DVD, you win a hat or something. In this case, they actually sell the product. So let's say it's a hat for the movie, and the hat's $19.95. They have a deal where they manufacture the hat for $5.95, and then the delta, they make a little money on that, and the people who buy that, they're actually buying the hat. Instead of buying a hat. So you don't have to give them a hat. And that transactional crowdfunding has actually worked really well. They're out in California. They're not huge. They got maybe 25,000 people on their little network now. But
So let me just turn this over to Richard for a second. Richard, would you tell us a little bit about what you look for in a good product against which you can lend money?
Sure. I will say that the projects I've seen over the last 2 years, the budgets have ticked up, which is kind of the opposite of what we've been talking about. But I would say between 5 and 10 million is what I've been looking at on the independent side. And you know, I tend to work with producers that I've worked with before that come back. Whether or not we also do just tax credit lending, so against the New York State tax credit. So we've done a number of those over the years where someone will come in, and I had one just recently. It was a $5 million project. It was all equity except for the tax credit. So we were just financing the tax credit piece. And luckily, we had, part of our deal was that we were still first in the waterfall, even though we only did the tax credit. And they sold at Sundance, and so we don't have to wait for New York State to pay us. Now we can get paid out of that distribution contract. But we look for there to be about 20 to 25% in equity. Hopefully there's some good pre-sales there with a good company, and then we're kind of filling in the gap for the rest of the piece. East West Bank certainly likes to advertise who they're doing business with, so they actually do a lot of business with China now. So if anybody's thinking of making a film in China or working with the Chinese, that's their big thing these days. But it's got to have the full package. I get a lot of people that come to me and say, I have a great script, and it's great, but we're the kind of the last people that you come to. Everything else has to be in place. What I would say, it's all about networking. So if everybody here is a New York filmmaker or writer, director, producer, if you're not a member of IFP in the city, you should go home and sign up right away. I think it's like, I don't know, $30 a year, but there's lots of networking opportunities with a lot of people there. And that's how you kind of, you may meet another filmmaker who knows another rich person, and that's kind of how it moves along. That's it, right? It's all in networking.
Master networker.
And as I got a book coming out about networking, schmoozing, making a living as a producer. I think you got to be organized about it. You got to be organized about your networking. You got to spend time on your networking. A lot of people don't spend. You actually have to schedule it into your schedule. How much time am I gonna spend? Maybe it could be just 2 hours a week, but schedule it. Researching people, contacting them, and meeting people. There's nothing like meeting people eyeball to eye. And to see a tsunami of texting and emailing and social media. There's nothing like meeting a person's eyeball to eyeball if you actually want them to be involved, if you want them to do something for you. So networking is very important, and as a producer, you have to know a lot of the people. A lot of people, the producers are totally focused on meeting financiers and investors. That's great, but they also have to meet sales agents, distributors, of course, directors and key crew, heads of film festivals, entertainment bloggers, entertainment journalists, union heads, a whole variety of occupations.
Yeah, and for the sales agents to get to know them, unfortunately, most of them are on the West Coast. So that's when you're at that point to get a sales agent involved, is take a trip. You take a trip out. I know one of Mark's clients not long ago. I mean, one producer was from Spain, the other one's in Pennsylvania. They met out in LA, and they kind of spent a week of going from agency to agency to see who was interested in the film, and that's kind of the way to do it. Again, you have to meet these people face to face and really pitch your project to those sales agents.
And somebody in a situation where the sales agents or a distributor may offer you a slightly lower money, but they're much more excited about it. They have a much better plan, a much better marketing plan. So don't let money guide you completely. If there's something, figure out who is excited about it. Really read. Producing is about reading people. How excited are they about the project? And are there other projects they've distributed that they can use the same technique or a different technique? Really talk to them about why they like the project.
Okay, so what are your questions? Yes.
Yes, I was wondering if you could talk more about branded entertainment and what a contract might look like, how much you can expect from someone to come in and say, yes, I want a nice brand on your project.
You opened the door.
Branded entertainment is becoming more. It always was there's several types of branded entertainment. When I was talking about branded entertainment, I was just talking about the content of your film. Is there some connection to a brand, meaning a novel? Maybe it's Winnie the Pooh or something, a famous author, a war, a historical incident, a hobby. You're talking, I think, about corporate brands, which is a totally different subject. And corporate, am I correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so corporate brands is not what I was referring to. Okay, I was referring to a brand, meaning there's some pre-existing audience who go to your film. It's a sequel with branded entertainment. The pre-existing audience went to the original film. Branded entertainment in terms of corporations, there are groups, for example, faith-based groups, for example, who finance faith-based films. Those are brands. Those are organizations, maybe a church or a charity. There are corporations that sponsor new media, like web series. BMW has a famous one. There are some corporations that are involved in product placement or brand integration for films. And that doesn't really come into play in my experience unless the film is a certain budget.
That's more than just a certain budget. The corporate brand isn't going to be involved unless they know there's distribution. So your independent film is not going to get Coke to pay $15,000 or $20,000 to have Coca-Cola all over the place, because they don't know if it's ever going to come out. What they're interested in is using the film as advertising for their product. The $120 million picture I mentioned earlier has a budget of $10 million that they expect to get for product placement. So, and they've already had those commitments because we know we're going to be distributed by a major studio. So that's the big part. So in terms of product placement, in terms of raising money, independent filmmakers should forget about it unless they have guaranteed distribution, and it's big time distribution.
Right, my project is for the web. I know
That's fine, that's fine.
So there are brands for the web. Look, there are about 50 corporations right now, or 75 in play, that are financing or subsidizing web series. Figure out which ones would appeal to you. Think if you know any people who are executives of corporations. They all have a marketing department. They may have a sponsorship person. It's just a question of talking to them and showing what you have.
Let me have this second. The thing that's very important also, outside of, and which part of this branding thing we're talking about is user base. So the rapper user base. So like that example, the rapper's in the movie, he's got how many, he had a lot of
5 million.
A lot of Twitter followers. Those Twitter followers are a user base that you can bring to a brand that may want to be associated with and say, hey, here's our reach. It's no different than putting a show on PBS. or anything like that. We have a movie we're doing that's based on a video game. We went to the video game distributor, Steam, which is an online video game thing, for distribution. Can we reach your 20, 30 million people? Then you can go to a brand and say, hey, we're going to reach this many people. But you can do it in smaller ways. The guy with the motorcycle movie, that's where he's going to be able to have some success. He can go to Harley Davidson and say, hey, I'm making a motorcycle movie. Will you put some money in? All right, who's going to see it, right? So that's not going to go anywhere. Maybe I'll give you a motorcycle, but I'm not going to do anything. Goes back to that same Harley Davidson, Tri-State Harley Davidson dealer or anywhere else and say, look, I've got 40,000 people in metropolitan New York area that know about my movie, have told me they're gonna watch it or whatever. Those are ways to build that and have credibility when you're talking to brands. And that stuff does work. And on a web thing, that does have some credibility. If you've got web placement that has audiences, so those little things get you corporate sponsors.
Is there anything else that you guys could suggest in terms of just having a good package bring in front of somebody that you want to brand your project? I mean, it's completely in alignment with what they're doing.
Passion.
Presentation.
Presentation. Who is your audience, and how do you plan to reach them? Who is your audience, and how do you plan to reach them? And if the brand and corporation has sponsored other web series that are similar to yours, you talk about those similarities.
Thank you.
Yes.
For home video, how do you guys feel about releasing through an aggregator versus a traditional distributor?
There's a home video market?
What do you mean by home video?
Like people downloading through iTunes or Netflix, Hulu, you see aggregators like Distributor offering those services, or you could go out to a traditional distributor if you had a film to put out.
I'll let you guys answer that.
Yeah, I mean, I can answer that a little bit. I mean, it comes down to this, whether it's an aggregator or a distributor, and both do, well, there's a little difference, but they both do one thing. They put it in a place to be seen, right? So it's on Netflix, it's on Hulu, it's on that. The distributor maybe will put some marketing behind it. They won't put $1 behind it if things don't hit pretty quick. So know that the bus stops. And the aggregator will do a lot of that. So whenever you think about that decision, think about, how am I going to let people know about the movie that it's there? What's going to happen there? Because you can get on places. You can get there. As I said, I launched this streaming business. Big deal. I can do it technologically, but people got to come. I got to market it. No one's going to come. And that's really, between the two of those things, an aggregator works well if you have a good social media presence, a good marketing behind it, maybe your own marketing. If it's, you can deliver a decent size, buyers to it, or audience, people that are interested in your movie. That's the key. User base, marketing, because you can get a movie. It's not that hard to get something on, iTunes or any of those other places through an aggregator or a distributor. It's all the other stuff. And I've had distributors, hey, great distributor, takes the movie, doesn't hit. Then you are going well early, you're done, you're baked. You are at the bottom of the pile, and that sucks. And that's not, that's something you can offset by doing some of these earlier things too. But that's just part of the business as well. They're gonna put their money behind things that are making them money.
Yes.
Is there any guideline about how much people get paid, like creative people, like for example, producer, director, writer, or is it very subjective?
What are you?
Well, I am a director primarily.
Yeah, you should get like $12 million. I would, right?
Of course.
Yeah. The budget maybe is $12.5 million. You're probably better off answering that.
There are rules of thumb, okay? So the writing package, the rights package, which is the underlying rights and the screenplay, should never exceed 5% of the budget. It can, it shouldn't, but 5% is a rough number. Typically, an original screenplay will run between 2 and 4% of the budget. The additional points go if it's based on a book or based on some other underlying material. I've heard directors should get around 5% of the budget. Depends again. There are films where directors take a lot less because they really want to do it. And there are films where they get a lot more. And for example, in this big picture I'm working on, most of the budget is CGI. So if the director would get $5 million to make the movie, it'd be out of whack, or $6 million, it'd be out of whack, because there's so much CGI to do. So you can't, they're just rules of thumb. And they're just, if you come in, I had a picture presented to me where the transportation budget from Manhattan to Coney Island, where the picture was supposed to be shot, was equal to the cast budget. I said, you guys don't know what you're doing. I'm not interested in working with you. Okay? That was for the Uber cars to go from Manhattan. I said, this is stupid. This is not how you do it. And I'm not going to work with you. So you have to have that kind of perspective in mind. I showed it to them. I said, this is what you really, and he said, that's what it cost. I said, no, it doesn't. So those are some of the rules of thumb. Producers get around 5%, maybe up to 10%. You know, there was a question in the earlier panel about finders. Finders are illegal. You're not supposed to use a finder to find your move, to find money. Everybody does, but they're illegal and they run a big risk. A finder gets anywhere from 2 to 5% of what he brings to the picture. And that's before you get to spend it. It doesn't come out of the budget, it comes in before, it comes off the top. Bankers charge closing fees, they charge interest, they don't lend against 100% of the value of the contract. So all of those things are going to reduce the amount of cash that's available to you as you go through this. Those are some rules of thumb you guys can.
No, it's all.
I would go up to 10% of some finders' costs, and you know, in this, because it's becoming increasingly hard to find equity in this economic climate. Basically, I'll give you a couple things. Let's say you make a film, you're a first-time director, and you make a film for 500 grand. You're not making much money, because everybody's working really hard and below cost, below the usual salaries, to launch you as a director. So if you make more than 20, 30 grand on that kind of $500,000 budget, you're lucky. Some people don't work with first-time directors. Many producers do not work with first-time directors. Those that do really put the brakes on how much you can make, and also insist that you help with financing. Because for them, it's a tremendous amount of time working with a first-time director. It's much more difficult. So they say, listen, you got to be involved in financing. You're not you got to be. You may not get credit as a producer, but most directors I know who are first-time directors who got films made, they helped. So
very often they require the financier or a lender or the bond company, if you get to that level, will require a very strong first AD, a very experienced AD who's going to help you be a better director.
And DP.
Right.
And DP is even more important. Make sure that DP has worked with first-time director, has a lot more experience. You know, a first-time director wants to surround themselves with a cast, with a crew that all know much more than they do. You know, it's not a time to just talk to your high school buddy and get them to fill up the crew. That's no. That you want to find, everybody should have be much more experienced than you are.
Yes, sir.
Oh, yeah, I'm working with a production team that put together trying to sell a TV series. Okay, is that vastly different than what we're talking about with film?
Yes, it's vastly different. First of all, it's a different, for the most part, it's a different buyer class completely. Different people. They have different conventions. So I'm involved in right now producing reality shows or non-fiction shows. Quality ones, but they're non-fiction reality shows. And
You didn't say high quality, just said quality.
no, I mean not cheesy ones.
It's a contradiction in terms.
No, a lot of people watch reality shows in our country. You know.
What?
Second of all, the fictional stuff. So, there are people at both, you know, and learning to know people at those networks, basically. And it is very, very different. They have to fill 1,500 hours. They need ideas like crazy. They do need ideas.
And the majors want bankable producers too, you know, to produce a TV show. Sometimes as a producer, you may have a great idea. They love the show. Right. This is great. Thank you. We're gonna have Bob make it.
Right.
That's not uncommon.
They'll pair you. You'll pair you with a showrunner, or they'll pair you with the non-fiction. They'll pair you sometimes they'll pair you with a production company. But It's a completely different field, but it's a very smart field to get involved in right now. Because
you're a writer,
there is
that's what it is.
there's the
Oh, yeah.
writer, director, producer.
Yeah.
It's a smarter field because they pay quick and they give you a yes or no very quickly.
Talk to you later.
There's one over there.
Sticking on that topic, so I'm working on a pilot right now, and
Fictional or non-fictional?
it is fictional based on a book series.
Okay. Do you have the rights to the book series?
Yes, from the author.
You have it contractually.
Right, yeah.
Okay.
Intellectual property rights, yeah. And I'm working with the author on it. She's actually one of the producers for the project. So my question is with that, we're trying to figure out, because, script, all that stuff is done. We're actually working on the pilot. Is it smart to shoot the pilot yourself and then try to go to the networks, or should you bring, the Bible?
That's a really great question. There's no set answer.
The answer is yes.
I disagree. For network
Yeah.
or cable, if you have a 2 or 3 minute scissor reel just to show, that's great. The actors are going to change. A lot of people are going to change. If there's a possibility you would go in the digital direction, so if it's digital people, they're more amenable to those kind of things.
Okay.
But to bring a pilot, unless it's incredible production values, to a place like NBC or HBO,
Right,
they look at you like, wait, what? I mean, that it's going to be incredible. What does happen, of course, every year, it happens 5 or 10 times, is when and when I say network, I mean either broadcast or cable. They will see things on the web that are getting a lot of viewers,
Right.
and they'll bring them into their world. They'll bring them into the TV world. But to do it just for the sake of presentation, in reality, you need what is called a scissor reel. It's a 2 to 4 minute reel.
Right.
In fictional, you could have like a small teaser, but it's really about the script and the Bible.
Yeah, let me answer that too, because I had a TV project now, and we went about it in a similar way that you're doing it, and we did make a pilot. However, it was a hybrid pilot. We shot the pilot with the intention of having this thing cut up into 15 or 20 3-minute segments, et cetera. And then we knew we can edit that into a finished pilot, so we put that out.
Right.
But we knew the content we shot, we could put into our half hour or hour, whatever it was going to be. And it worked great because we were able to get these little pieces out and still tell the story in a sequence, yet when you put that together as a pilot, so that got attention. And then the other thing is you could blow it or score it by doing it. It's a risk. So your point, production value goes to, you got to work with the showrunner. Bob's going to make it for us, because if you nail it, like your production values, you're right there. You do a great job. Awesome. You just you show them something you can execute. Boom, great. So I'm a bit of a gambler with that kind of stuff, or maybe, but.
But I think it's important that you hear the answer, which is no one knows the answer.
Right.
The answer is the one that works.
Yeah, it goes. There's a lot of different ways.
It's very hard to do. I'm also producing a TV series, actually, based on a true story of a guy who was convicted of the same crime twice and was reversed on appeal twice. So we're actually packaging them like a movie. We went to a casting director. We're going to attach an A-level director to at least do the first episode, if not more, and then we're going to take it over to people who are going to do financing. And we've already started teasing the financing on that, whether it's going to be on Netflix or HBO or Showtime. We've already started talking about that. And we own the rights. This is work for hire and all that kind of stuff. So it's all kind of covered that way. But it's just, we don't know that this is the right way to go. We think it's the right way to go.
And the last part is, we were planning on, because she does have a fan base, she had the book we're working on was a bestseller in the New York Times. And so we were trying to do what he was talking about, maybe do some sizzle stuff or even some small scenes and try to use her fan base to market and try to get them excited about it. I mean, I don't know if that's the right way to do it, but we're just trying to see about it.
She's top 10 best-selling author, you know, one thing that could help is just doing a brief interview with her. And just you know, let her talk about these books that you're writing about.
Which is a lot less expensive than doing a sizzle reel, or which is what he's driving at, right? Because all of this has a cost attached to it. So the answer is, the right way to do it is the way that works.
That's a good answer.
Anybody else?
One over here.
Yes, sir.
I just wanted to know your experiences with looking for development funds, and how do you work with an investor when you're looking for films that are potentially not theatrical distribution, but more along the lines of VOD?
Development funds can get 200%. I give 200% for development funds. If something happens, they get 200% of what they get. That's what I pay. It's not, I mean, so if they put in 100 grand, I give them 200 grand if the thing happens, because it's so risky. Because so many projects never happen. To limit your project to VOD at this point doesn't seem advantageous to you. I mean, I wouldn't advertise it as only VOD. You don't know what it is until it's done. You don't know what it is. But VOD is not necessarily a bad thing. It's made a lot of people money.
But how would you convince, like, let's say, for better or for worse, your film is primed for the VOD market, like a slasher horror film. How, if you know an investor, like, what was your?
I would put it.
Is there like?
If you can't put together a business plan and show them comparables that are not ridiculous comparables. Ridiculous comparables, unless they're extremely unsophisticated, they're going to laugh at. All right, if you just show Napoleon Dynamite or you know, those films that make enormous amounts of money. That, what was the horror film that Barrett's?
Saw.
Sorry?
Paranormal Activity.
Paranormal. Those are so rare. Those are 1 out of 10,000. If you can just show run-of-the-mill projects that have been released in the last couple of years in VOD, and if you can find out information about what they made, that's very convincing.
See, I actually disagree with that, and we disagree all the time. So I don't think showing projections makes any sense at all, because none of them will show the ones that lost money. And you're basically implying to the investor that if I do okay, if the picture does okay, then you're going to get your money back. And here's why: because this picture did that, and that picture did that. But each one is unique to that one. And there's no way to take prior performance on a different picture and have it predict the results on yours. I just don't believe that. And I think that I've always told my clients not to bother, because they do include Paranormal Activity, the Blair Witch Project.
I'm saying not to include those.
I know, but they can't help it.
Yeah,
But how do you convince an investor otherwise? You got to show them something.
No, you can. Well, you don't show them that.
What do you show them?
You don't show them projected. You don't show prior results of prior films. You say that if the picture is sold 200,000 times on VOD, it'll generate this much money. But you don't say it compares favorably or unfavorably to another picture. You just show the math. You don't necessarily show that my picture is going to be similar to this one, because it's not. It's a very different picture, and I personally think it's a bad idea. Doesn't mean people don't do it, and we're still friends. But
I don't think it's a bad idea. I just think that putting the huge all-stars in there is exaggerated. If you put it in a more realistic manner, hey, these are 5 things that have been released last year, and this is what they made. Maybe there's a variance.
Because most of the people that you, like, you know, from my experience, are very numbers based. So they don't care about who's acting, who's directing, as long as there's some sort of distribution and, like, you know, a decent waterfall breakdown. They're happy. So it's always trying to figure out how would you attract an outsider into the film business.
And you think about the math. So I had a colossal blunder on this exact scenario. We had a movie came out, cost $500,000. We sold about 380,000 units. Okay, DVDs mostly, and then some other stuff. So the movie did really well. Did 12 million, something with everything told in. We went and made a sequel, and the sequel was $1 million+ budget, thinking now we're going to make a bigger, better movie. We got this following. We did 388,000 units of pay-per-view at $4.95. So the numbers were just so dramatically different, even if we projected, and we did project off of, hey, we did this last time, it was a complete, classic, it's the numbers. Number of units times $495, number of units times $29.95, and that's the difference in the whole marketplace now, is now digital, downloads, streaming, pay-per-view. What's it? Couple of bucks to $9, maybe. So the economics have changed dramatically. So we had a hit, #1 hit for Anchor Bay at that point ever. Now they've blown past that because they've gotten a lot bigger. And then we duplicated that.
I think the main thing, and I think what we're talking about underneath, is just being honest and authentic, and never telling that the money's going to be the guaranteed profits. It's a risk. It is a risk. It's a risk, and there's no way to mitigate that risk. I mean, there are ways to mitigate it. There's no way to say that it's not a risk. I always tell investors it's a risk. I'm always honest with them, and I'm always forthright and authentic, and that's the main thing you can say. It's a risk, but I think if you do realistic comparables, you can say it may be like one of these 10 that have been released in the last year.
On the same answer you're giving, can I ask you another question? You said that sometimes you can give examples of films which made this much. What's the most reliable way to find what film actually made? Because you see a number on Wikipedia, and some people say, well, don't rely on that figure. What's the most reliable?
It's one of the biggest criticisms of both studio and independent film world, of the film business, because it's unlike, let's say, I don't know, the iron ore business. It's not transparent, so it's not easy to get completely accurate budget or recoupment. It's not easy. But there's a place there's Box Office Mojo, there's IMDb, there's you could Google it through Variety or Hollywood Reporter or Screen Daily may mention it. Variety has
but that's mainly theatrical, right? It's not going to include the VOD or
It's hard to find information.
Yeah.
It's really hard. I think there are specialized newsletters that people can subscribe to in the business for $300 a day, a month or whatever, that may have that. But it's hard.
The Baseline is a place you can go. It's very expensive. Box Office Mojo just covers the theatrical, and you should also know that the information on IMDb is wiki. It is a wiki for film information, so it is not 100% accurate either. Anybody can post anything on any film. I have clients who have made, or friends who have posted themselves as associate producers on pictures that they had nothing to do with, because they felt like putting their name up there, and it's hard for IMDb to say no. So the level of accuracy at IMDb is medium. I really wouldn't rely on a whole lot of stuff there. Box Office Mojo tries to do the right thing for theatrical. If you really want to get the information, you got to call someone who knows, or you got to write to someone who knows. That would be one of the producers, and they're not going to tell you. And that's something else that I think you guys should be aware of. When a painter paints a painting, he buys canvas, he buys paint, he puts it up there, and he creates a piece of art. Nobody asks him how much it cost to make the painting. When you do a film, you're creating another kind of art. It's commercial, but it's art. And if you can get away with not telling anybody what the budget is, you should do that. Let them think what the budget is. You don't need to know. They don't need to know. They need to know what they think the picture is worth when they watch it. Now they're going to come up and they're going to estimate the cost of the picture anyway. And they're probably going to come in a little bit higher. And that's okay too. But there's no rule that says you have to tell anybody what the budget of your picture is. Nobody. Everybody walks around town and says, I'm doing a $600 million picture. I'm doing a $200,000 picture. Why? Who cares? It matters that the picture is done correctly, looks good, is in sync, which is a very big deal, by the way, because I've had people come to me with pictures that go like this. So, and they want me to help them sell it. So you laugh, but they go, well, can you help me sell it? It's like, no, go away. So just do it so that it comes out right. You don't have to tell anybody the budget. You don't have to tell them what contract you did it under at SAG, because that tells them the budget too.
You got a lot of people coming through your office, man. What the hell's going on? what kind of a show are you running? Holy crap!
But
Jim, how much time do we have? Are we done? Where is it?
We got an hour.
1:30, so.
I'm sorry?
You wanted to 1:30, so.
Oh, okay. You got one till 1:30, good.
Yes.
I was just gonna say on the ancillary side, it's really difficult to find out what anyone's making, and a lot of times the producers don't know. I worked on a film a few years ago, Arbitrage with Richard Gere, and it's, you know, after a while it was held up as one of the films that was making the most money on VOD. So I called the producer in the morning, I'm like, this is great. He's like, where'd you read that? I was like, I keep trying to find out how much it's making. They wouldn't tell me. So it's pretty cool. It's a weird business. when
And
it
it's
comes
a
to
problem
VOD.
to draw new investors for that reason,
Yeah.
because it's not transparent.
Going along with that, a question. If you, let's say you're a first-time filmmaker, and people are talking about putting money into your project, is there something, like I've tried to find what, as a first-time filmmaker, I would be expected to return? Is there a percentage, a blueprint of what happens if they do, let's say somebody puts $200,000 into your film?
What I usually say is, if the film performs, 4 very important words, right? If the film performs, meaning it makes a profit, they get their investment plus a premium, usually in my experience 15 to 30%. So they get 115, 130%, and they get half of the net relative to what their estimate is to other people. So if they put in 50%, they get 25% of the net.
Well, supposing someone else comes along and says, all right, I want in on this too, is it now there's extra money, the more money that comes in, I mean, you don't want to do it with the producers, you start giving out percentages.
That won't work. That won't work. Because your first investor is going to say, if your budget's 500 and he gives you 200, he expects you to spend no more than an additional 300, because that gives him his share of profits.
Okay.
If you get someone else who's going to come in and give you 400, you have to turn down the last 100,000, because the first guy is now getting diluted down below his number if you're going to give more away. So if your that's why the budget is very important to do with every line item. Not, I think it's going to cost $500,000. It's like the director costs this, the producer costs this, the rights cost that, the locations cost this, right all the way down the line, a complete budget, then you go out raising money.
It's very, very important, and add a couple $100,000 to that budget, because if there are things that you don't know about, like music rights or whatever, add a little bit to that. Look, that happened to me, and I diluted investors, and they were not happy. They were very upset. So I really try to keep it pari passu. In other words, all investors get the same amount at the same time.
Okay.
If you get them any money back, I mean, the movie business, it's hard to recoup money. But if you get them money back, maybe not all, you're doing pretty well. You're ahead of a lot. You're ahead of the bulk of the group, you know.
And you'll have someone who wants to invest in your next film.
Yeah.
That's the important part.
But you want to get them back your money.
If you get them their money back, they'll invest again the next time.
Right.
And that's what most of the producers I work with have, the same investors film after film, because they're able to at least sell distribution and get some of that money back.
And for those of you who are doing your first film, we're talking about 2 million, 3 million. You know, I may disagree with some of my fellow panelists here, but I think it's important just to get something done. And if that's 50 grand or 100 grand, this way you learn about the whole process, you learn about the marketing, the publicity, the distribution, working with a cast and crew, who's important in the cast and crew, how to negotiate with the cast and crew, working with investors, getting publicity, releasing it. You know, start off small. Don't start off so big, because unless you connect yourself or partner with somebody who has the experience to reach out to the big names, start off smaller, make something distinctive. That's the main. Make something that we can't say it's derivative, that's been done before. And it's good. It's high quality. The dialogue is good. The script has been done. You know, I do a lot of work as a rewriter. I do 4 or 5 jobs a year as a rewriter, and sometimes I do it as a script analysis. Most scripts are not ready. They're simply not. 95% of scripts, or 99%, are not ready. Make sure that script is ready. Make sure that director is capable. Make sure you have the best possible crew, and just get something done instead of dreaming about having a pipe dream that you're going to make a $5 million film and never make anything.
Even just make it short. Something that has a calling card that says, look, I did this. And it's not just negotiating when you make the deals, it's negotiating on set. Because you have to be able to get everybody to do what you want them to do. It's not easy to do. Because, you know, you have a vision if you're the director or the director-producer or the director-producer-writer. You have a vision. You have to get other people to buy into your vision. It doesn't happen automatically. It takes work. They have to believe in you. They have to understand what you're doing. They have to understand why. And sometimes you actually have to convince them to do that while you're standing there while all these people are getting paid. And if it takes you an hour to get that done, all these people are getting paid while you're sitting there for an hour. And that's costs money. Yes?
I have a short in festival now, and I'm working on a second short that'll be done hopefully soon. When you guys were talking about, I was actually going to ask that question about like the first time when you're doing your first time feature. Like, besides, you already answered the question. I guess we might get it done and have the smaller budget just to have it completed. But is there anything you could say about when to make that decision? Like, do you recommend doing, you know, several high quality shorts before you go into your first feature, or one's enough because a short is only going to get you so far?
Here's a lawyer's answer. It depends. Depends mostly on you. If you don't feel you're ready for it, then don't do it. If you're ready for it, then do it. Only you are going to be the one who's going to know that, if you're the director and the writer. It really is that. It's not any more than that. You say, I've done now 3 of these. I don't want to do this anymore. I'm ready for a feature. Go do it. Or if you've done 1, you say, I'm ready. If you've done 6, it's all about you, because the passion in what you're doing has to come out when you're pitching to the guy for the VOD and you want development money. You have to absolutely be totally passionate about it. There's nothing going to get in your way. If that guy doesn't invest, thank you for your time. I'm really grateful. Do you know anybody else who might be interested? And you move on to the next guy. It's like selling Fuller Brush door to door. They close the door, you go next door. You just, because your passion will carry you. If you don't have the passion, you shouldn't do it.
We've all been there. We've all been where you are. And some of us didn't make shorts, some of us made shorts. We've all been there. You take the risk. Some of my favorite movies, by the way, at this festival are the folks who went out and made a $15,000, $20,000 feature. A couple last year that were great, a few this year that are great. You know, Deb's doing some shorts out there, putting it out there and just getting them done. So it's just you.
I've made 5 features. I just made a short a year and a half that's doing the festival circuit. It's been in 40 festivals. We won a bunch. It's called Homophonia. It's a comment take on gay marriage. I wanted to practice. I wanted to practice. But there may be I'm going to answer this as that's a director. Now I'm going to be a writer and answer this. There may be a project that you're thinking about that would not, it just doesn't do it justice to be a short. You need to make a feature. And that will help guide you. And you may not direct your first feature. Maybe you'll get, everybody wants to be a director, but if you want to be a writer and a director, that adds 5 to 10 years to your career if it ever happens. Directing is very, very hard. Very few people, we can literally fit feature film directors who make a living as feature film directors in this room. So everybody wants to be a director. It's wonderful. Everybody wants to be a movie star. But if you can get a feature made and get a feature credit, that's better than not getting a feature made and insisting that you're a director and it's not getting made.
Yeah, but if you're not working, so it's good to get it done.
Work begets work.
Yes, in the back, Amy.
He's had his hand up for a half an hour now.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We've been talking about like first-time filmmakers making their movie for like $1 million. Realistically, for me, if I do my feature like next year, let's say, probably gonna be $50,000 or a lot less. Are there people out there who are like serious investors who are interested in financing those kinds of films, and are they the same people that are doing the $1 million features? And how does that process change on such a smaller budget? Like you're not.
Yes, is the answer.
You're not doing the foreign pre-sales.
And I wouldn't be surprised if Vin would do it, if it made sense. There are people like Vin in my
Check under your chair.
There are people out there, because here's the thing, if you can do a $50,000 picture and it does well, oh great, and it does well, there's a much bigger chance that they're going to make their money back and a big profit.
Exactly. So how do you find those people? Are those the same people that are doing?
Just ask everybody you know.
It's the key to sales, and that's what you are. Is you got to ask for the order. So $50,000 budget though, think about risk reward. $5 million, $50,000.
I know.
Right?
Yeah.
So going to $50,000 means you don't have to find the richest guy in the neighborhood either. means you can find 50 people for $1,000. Okay, or you can find 100 people for $500. All of a sudden, that's not bad. That means some of my friends would do that, right? And then and so on and so forth, right? So I love that, and I love the fact that make a great movie for $50,000. To me, that's what it's all about. And I broke in the business making with Eddie Burns back early when he started doing his movies. He made a movie that went to Sundance on credit cards, just like that. This is how you start, man. Make a great movie like that for 50 grand.
I have a client who's doing a picture right now. It was budgeted at 75. It was 100% financed by another guy I know. They went over, but the picture's going to get done, and their plan is not to release in the U.S. It's a type of picture that will do well in foreign sales on TV. They'll sell 5,000, 10,000 here and there, and they'll make their money back.
One other thing, why he says foreign sale. If any of you have a foreign passport or the option to get one, that's incredibly useful in film financing. Because most countries in the world, America's like the only one that doesn't have it, most countries in the world actually subsidize films. So you can get money if you have Canadian or Irish or British or German. If you have another passport, or even if your spouse has another passport, that's another means of getting financing. It's a little bit outside of the American system, but they have government subsidies and they have co-productions. So let's say you have a Canadian passport, you can then do a UK, Canadian, or Canadian, Australian. I can't tell you the esoteric conversations I heard in Cannes this year about 2 or 3 countries ganging up to make films. So if you happen to have that, I'm not saying move this wonderful country I love, but if you happen to have that in your life, take advantage of it.
Go on that Russian bride website, see what you can find.
Yes.
So now I actually have 2 questions. You just talk about the foreign country. I'm originally from Hungary, and filming in Hungary nowadays is becoming more and more popular.
Very, very big.
Is it easier to get an investor if I can prove that the budget drops to a quarter of the amount if we film in Hungary, let's say?
Well, they give 20%, and then they'll find equity for you for another 20 or 25%. So you have half the film almost done.
Oh, great. Okay. And
The answer to your question, is it easier to find an investor with a lower budget? Typically, the answer is yes. It doesn't matter where it gets filmed.
Oh, okay. All right.
It's one movie.
Okay. Sorry,
Yeah, it's a product, and the product cost extra.
I did a deal many years ago with the Soviet Union where we were doing a $100 million picture, and the Soviets were putting up 70% of the budget, and my guy was putting up 30%, and we split the profits 50-50. Okay? But they were providing the entire below the line. Entirely. My guys couldn't raise the money, but that was the structure of the deal. So you can get it done. And the argument was, it's one product. It's one film. Who cares where it's made? Who cares how much it costs? If it's a good film, we want to see it.
And I have one more question. You were saying just to put something out there with your name on it.
Yes.
In 2009, there was a movie made called Colin, and it actually made it to the Sundance Film Festival. The budget for the movie, there was a vampire kind of thing movie. It was $100 budget. So is that something? I'm not saying I want to make a $100 budget movie, but if something's a really low budget, can I still take it to an investor as an example? Hey, I made this. Is it
Depends how good it is. You're trying to impress people.
Okay.
Well, if it impresses them, yes. If it doesn't impress them, no.
And I don't believe that picture was made for $100.
Yes. Can you make a pilot or a series of short pilots, 10 minutes each or whatever, and sell it to a network just as an idea? Outright, saying, here's our idea.
Why would you make the pilots? Why wouldn't you just sell the script?
Well, let's say there is no script. It's done ad lib.
Is it nonfiction or fiction?
It's fiction, based on a real life people in New York.
I suppose the answer is maybe, right? It depends. It depends on how good it is.
No, I was just wondering if people sell an idea, a pilot saying, this is our pilot, we don't want to have anything to do with it, we really just want to sell you the idea.
It's very rarely, unless you have a tremendous track record, like you're a multi-Emmy Award winner, then they'll listen to you. But if you've done nothing, this is your way to break in. I don't think it's a great way to break in. Write an amazing pilot script, and then maybe when you're in the room, you can show an edited version of the pilot you have.
They want to see a script, in other words.
Yes, big time.
Yeah.
And fictional and non-fictional, just a 2 to 3 page treatment. and an amazing 2 to 5 minute sizzle reel, which is like a trailer of what the show will look like.
Sizzle's key. Good quality sizzle. Sizzle reels. Visual.
I'm using the film that's screening like in about 10 minutes, Easy and Honey Boy, as part of a pitch for a television series. We have George Roberts in it. The guy who's it's based on a New York Times best-selling author. He's got 60,000 followers on Facebook. He's collectively got 4 million hits on YouTube. And I was just wondering, when you're pitching that in the way that I plan on doing it, with actually approach one person we're talking to, like how does it, like, I'm a little unsure of like what my position would be. I mean, I wrote the film. I mean, I wrote this film. I wrote the concept and the treatment. So it's based on this guy's life. So once a studio gets involved with Netflix, I mean, odds are I'm probably going to be pushed out.
You can try to be an executive producer or creator.
I acted in it too.
But yes, correct. When a network or even these big digital companies like Netflix jump in, they are the boss. They're paying you. They're the boss.
And you know why? Because it's their money.
They're completely the boss, and you can't and say, "Hey, I want to be the director." Maybe they'll be remember to let you direct the 6th or 7th episode, but they're going to have their own director. And the thing of most concern is they're going to have their own showrunner. So your friend Frankie down the street, who may have produced your film, is not going to get a fictional TV show. That's not going to happen.
Who does not know what a showrunner is? Okay, so why don't we define the term? Jim, what's telling the showrunner?
A showrunner is an executive producer in a TV show, which means he or she is a producer, and generally they're also the writer and line producer, and they do everything. They're the boss. They're the CEO.
They're the responsible.
They're the CEO of a TV show.
Yeah. Any scripted television show you watch, you're going to see executive producer, and you're going to see the same name as the writer. That's what you're going to see every time. All the major network shows are like that.
That's the big difference between film and TV shows. With film, the director is really the person who's running the show. In TV, it's the showrunner. They hire the directors for the different episode, but they're basically using the showrunner's vision of the show.
They're the glue.
Yeah.
And pulling in.
One more question. Yes, sir.
So generally with that, if you're the creator coming in and Netflix or any of them pick you up, I heard one of you say that they may pair you with an experienced showrunner, or will they just push you out all together? Because a lot of times, generally, the creator is the showrunner as well, or at least they have the credit.
If you haven't been a showrunner for a national TV show, chances are they'll pair you with a production company / showrunner, and they'll be in charge. You won't.
Okay.
They may allow you to have a position in the show, but you'll be one of the people, and you will not be the ultimate boss.
It's like bonding for the bank. That's the guarantee that it's going to be done. Yeah. It's not great. I know.
It's just what it is. Okay, quick plug. We go to Kickstarter, 27 Santas and an Elf called Kevin. I'm producing it. It's a show about Santa's evil brother who tries to kidnap Santa and take Christmas away. It's a show going to be on this fall. He loves it.
I'm so happy it's going to be made. I also do production consulting and entertainment careers consulting. So I think you all have the papers. Contact me.
Actually, no. You drew a bigger crowd this year, Jim.
Okay, so you can come up to me, or I'm on @GetReal, Great Real, GETREL, or LinkedIn would be Jim Germanic.
Yeah.
And I'm happy to send you the 2-page thing if you haven't gotten it here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.